Welcome back to the channel, The Unrevealed Realities. This is where forgotten evidence, hidden lives, and secret chapters of ordinary people quietly resurface, sometimes when no one is ready to hear them. The bench was old, cracked along the edges, bolted loosely into the concrete beside a service road that most people only noticed when traffic slowed. It wasn't a place anyone stopped unless they had no choice. That morning, the sky was dull and overcast, the kind of gray that makes time feel suspended. At 7:39 a.m., a man sat down on that bench to tie his shoe, and that's when he saw it, a small black USB drive resting near the metal leg, half covered in dust, positioned so neatly it didn't look dropped. It looked placed. He stared at it for a moment longer than necessary. In a city trained to ignore things, hesitation itself felt unnatural. The USB was heavier than expected when he picked it up, the plastic scratched, the metal connector bent slightly as if it had been used in a hurry. There was no tag, no keychain, no brand name. Just 3 faintly carved letters on the back, barely visible under grime, R.K.A. He didn't know it then, but that bench would become a reference point in a story no one wanted to believe, a story of work taken out of desperation, of trust misplaced, and of evidence hidden in plain sight. By that evening, the USB was plugged into a laptop inside a cramped room where the fan rattled louder than the traffic outside. The cursor hovered for a second before clicking. One folder appeared, just one, no thumbnails, no previews. The folder name wasn't random, it was a date, 14/08/2019. Inside were dozens of files. Videos, GPS logs, audio fragments, a single text file titled, "If Found." The first video opened without music, without editing, without context. Just raw footage. A man sat in front of a mirror with a crack running diagonally across it, splitting his face into uneven halves. He looked exhausted, eyes bloodshot, shoulders tense. Before he spoke, the timestamp stamped itself into the corner of the screen, 10:03 p.m. "If someone finds this," he said quietly, as if the walls might hear him, "then I didn't finish what I started." His name was Raheel Khan. At first glance, Raheel was forgettable. Late 20s, average height, no distinctive features, the kind of person you'd pass on the street without a second thought. And that was the problem. Raheel blended in everywhere, construction sites, cafes, night buses, shared apartments. He survived on freelance work, filming events, corporate training videos, small advertisements. Nothing glamorous, nothing secure, payments delayed, contracts verbal, promises vague. He spoke about money the way people do when it controls every decision, not dramatically, not angrily, but with quiet calculation. Rent due in 10 days. Sister's college fee overdue. Phone bills stacking up. He wasn't chasing luxury. He was chasing stability. That was when the offer came. The second video jumped to 6:18 a.m., recorded from the back of a bus. City lights faded as concrete turned to dust and unfinished buildings slid past the window. Raheel didn't look at the camera while speaking. He described a documentation job, offered through a referral. Private client, cash payment, no paperwork, no online transfer. The condition was simple. Record exactly what he was told, ask no questions, deliver the footage physically. He laughed softly when he said that last part. "They don't trust the internet," he said. "Neither do I anymore." The pay was triple his monthly income. The hustle began the moment he said yes. Over the next few videos, Raheel documented his routine with obsessive detail. Locations, times, faces half hidden in shadows. Meetings held in parking garages. Where engines stayed off. Long hours waiting in abandoned buildings where phones lost signal. Men who never used names, only nods. Equipment checked and rechecked. Memory cards counted. Drives sealed. Each file carried GPS metadata precise enough to map his movements down to meters. Analysts later described it as a breadcrumb trail built intentionally. Raheel wasn't careless. He was preparing. At 1:12 a.m., one video captured audio only. Low voices. One man complained about delays. Another said, "After transfer, no more recording." The word, transfer, came up again and again. Never explained, never clarified, just assumed. Raheel's breathing grew heavier in later clips. He began sleeping in different places. Sometimes in his car, sometimes on rooftops. He mentioned being followed twice but dismissed it quickly, like someone afraid that acknowledging fear might make it real. Then came the night that changed the tone completely. The video was timestamped 11:59 p.m. The camera faced him directly. No mirror, no background, just a hanging bulb swinging slightly, casting uneven shadows across his face. There was a bruise on his cheek. A cut above his eyebrow. He didn't explain either. They said this is just proof, he said. But proof of what? He paused mid-sentence, listening. I thought if I kept copies, if something happened, someone would know this wasn't an accident. That was the first time he mentioned copies. The file ended abruptly. Footsteps. A sudden movement. The camera tilted sideways and cut to black. After that, the videos stopped. What followed instead were GPS logs. A single coordinate appeared again and again, recorded every 6 hours for 5 days. The same latitude, the same longitude, unmoving. When investigators later plotted the point, it led to the same roadside bench where the USB had been found. Raheel Khan was reported missing 3 days after the last video. His sister filed the report. She told police he'd stopped answering calls, stopped replying to messages, stopped coming home. His equipment was gone, his bank account untouched, his phone last pinged near the outskirts of the city. The case stalled quickly. No witnesses, no CCTV, no forced transactions, just another missing freelancer in a city full of them. Until the USB surfaced. Forensic analysis confirmed the files hadn't been altered. The metadata was intact. The timestamps aligned with cell tower data recovered later. Raheel had been telling the truth. He had known something would happen. But the most disturbing discovery wasn't in the videos. It was in the text file titled, If Found. The document was short, no emotion, no backstory. If you are reading this, do not try to find me. Just submit this where it cannot be buried. I didn't want to disappear quietly. That line changed how investigators viewed everything. Raheel hadn't been running, he had been documenting his own erasure. The bench, authorities believe, wasn't where he vanished. It was where he returned. Somewhere between the final recording and the repeated GPS pings, Raheel had come back to that bench. He sat there long enough for the coordinates to log again and again. He placed the USB deliberately, carefully, as if rehearsed. No one knows what happened after. No arrests were made, no suspects named publicly. The company Raheel claimed to work for denied knowing him. Phone numbers traced to prepaid lines. Faces in the videos obscured just enough to avoid identification. The case was quietly archived under, inactive. But the evidence remains. Because sometimes the hustle leads to success. Sometimes it leads to survival. And sometimes, it leads to something else entirely, a story that refuses to stay buried. Raheel Khan didn't leave behind a body. He left behind a record, and that record waited patiently, on a roadside bench, for someone ordinary enough to stop and notice. Thanks for watching the Unrevealed Realities. If this story stayed with you, subscribe, share it forward, and remember, some truths don't disappear, they wait.